So for today's setup guide, I'm going to get you up and running with Commodore Amiga using Playnite front-end launcher. So if you've never heard of Playnite before, it's pretty much an absolutely 100% free alternative to Launchbox. It acts in a similar type of manner, and it works generally the same where we're going to be linking up emulators into Playnite in order to launch our games. So if you're new to Amiga or you're original fan of Amiga from the 80s and 90s, you might still be confused which files you need. You're going to be presented with Kickstart files, ADF files, and everything else which comes with it. Amiga is one of the systems which is quite considered, I think, to be one of the most complex to emulate. But put that aside, I'm going to get you the easiest way to run Amiga, and it's also going to be a dual setup guide. So we're going to get you running with this through Playnite as well as having a standalone system. So you have an option of two ways really in this video of running your Commodore Amiga games. So let's check this out. Okay, first things first, if you're new to my channel and you like what you see today, do hit notifications and also be sure to subscribe and hit like. It gets you the up-to-date latest emulation content that I upload every day pretty much. And I cover other front-end systems such as RetroBat, Launchbox, RetroArch, standalone emulators for the Commodore Amiga, as well as consoles from the PS3 to the Nintendo NES. So we're going to get on with this one today. So like I say at the start of this video, I'm going to get you running with Playnite. So let's firstly download Playnite. So link's going to be in my description for this. And like I say, Playnite is absolutely free. And we're going to quickly download Playnite. And once you've downloaded Playnite, you're going to find a Playnite installer.exe. Let's just quickly double left click on this one. And what I recommend doing for this part is creating a folder somewhere. Otherwise, by default, Playnite is going to install in your app data, local, and that can be a little bit of a pain to find at times. So for this, I'm going to just create a quick folder on my desktop by right clicking on it, new folder, and I'm going to just call this one Playnite so we got easier access if we need to in the future. So once you've done this, we can now go to destination folder, go to browse and desktop and Playnite and OK. So as we can see, destination folder is now set to Playnite, which is on my desktop, and everything's going to install into that folder. So let's press install. Okay, so this is your main interface or graphical user interface for Playnite. And what we're going to do next is actually look into the Amiga system itself, which we're going to be using. Before we do that, we can delete this exe. We no longer need this install file, so just right click on that and delete it. That'll go to your recycle bin. Next up, what we're going to do is just refer you to Amiga Forever. So Amiga emulation heavily requires what's called Kickstart ROMs. And what Kickstart ROMs are different system or rather firmware for several of the different Amiga models. So in other words, to boot up a Commodore Amiga, we would have needed a Kickstart ROM. And there's many of these. There's different revisions crossing the several different models of Commodore Amiga from back in the day. But you do need these Kickstart ROMs, and you can buy these from Amiga Forever. And they're literally a few pounds or a few dollars if you're in America. But if you want the best experience, you definitely need Kickstart ROMs for this. I've already got mine, and I'll leave the link in my description for this. So go ahead and buy your Kickstart ROMs and also support Amiga Forever. What we're going to do next, before I actually go and download the emulator, is I highly recommend you go to this website, and the link's going to be in my description. And what this website does once you've logged in and registered is works alongside fs-uae, which is the emulator I'm going to be using to launch our Amiga games with. And what Open Retro Game Database does is scrapes all the metadata and the artwork for our Amiga games. And like I say, this setup guide is really technically two setup guides. So we can run our games through fs-uae, and we can also run them directly through Playnite. So what you need to do with Open Retro Game Database is just log in and obviously register first. It's absolutely free, but you need this to work alongside fs-uae. So just log in or register. So once you've registered with Open Retro Games Database, just be sure to log in. They should send you an email just to confirm your registration. But you do need this, like I said, for fs-uae to get the best results. Next up, what we're going to do is just head over to the fs-uae website. Now, for those unaware, fs-uae is what's called a fork of the famous WinUAE. Although fs-uae is a bit of a more friendly interface to use. WinUAE, it's regarded as a very complex system to use, and it can be if you're new to Amiga emulation. So fs-uae simplifies it to the best of its abilities. So on the fs-uae website, just go to download. And there's two files you need to download this, or rather two zip files. So we need to download the top one just here, and this is currently on version 3.1.66. And we also need to download the zip below it, which is the launcher. So download both of these, and this one too. And just give this a little bit of time to download. Okay then, so once you downloaded both of these zip files from the fs-uae website, we've got two here. And what I'm going to do is create another folder on my desktop. So right click and new and folder. And I'm going to just simply call this one fs-uae. And we then need to drag both of these zip files inside of this new folder I've just created. So everything's nice and neat, and both of these need to be together. So we've got both our zip files now inside of this newly created fs-uae folder I've created, and what we're going to do is just right click, and we need to extract the contents of these. So I'm using WinRAR, you might be using 7-zip or WinZip. They all work the same, extraction tools do the same thing, but we need to extract what's inside of these zip folders or zip files. So we got this one, which has just come out, and we can now delete this one because we've just extracted its contents. And we're also going to do the same for this next one, which is fs-uae launcher. So again, just extract. And there we go. So once you've extracted these, what we're going to do now is just delete this other zipped file too. So next up, what we're going to do is start setting up this fs-uae emulator system. So if we go to fs-uae launcher, in here you're going to find Windows. So just go inside of there, and then another folder x86, 64, open this one. And if we just scroll down just a touch, you're going to come across the .exe. And here we go, fs-uae launcher.exe. So whilst I'm here, what I'm going to do for quick access of getting into fs-uae in the future is just right click on this and make a shortcut of it. So if I go to show more options and send to, I'm going to desktop create shortcut. And there we go. So if we close out of this now, we can easily access this through the shortcut. Okay, so we're going to get this set up now, and what I recommended doing just a minute ago was the Open Retro website, and this is where this comes in handy. This is what we're going to start with first. So if I go up to the symbolic Amiga tick just there at the top left, just left click on that, and from here I'm going to go to login register. And as we can see, it's asking us to log into our Open Retro account. So once you've signed up with Open Retro, just use your email address and your password. I'm going to just pop mine in now. Once you've logged in, it's going to give you some windows popping up saying update in database. Just let this do its thing. It shouldn't take too long, but this is going to completely update metadata as well as database entries. As you can see, just let this do its thing. So once that process is finished, you're going to notice some changes. All of a sudden, you're going to see all these Amiga games. But don't get too excited. We can't play these. These are just showing us pretty much the entire library of Amiga games. For example, if I just double left click on one of these, it's going to say downloads game manually. So these games actually need to be on your computer and we need to almost import them into fs-uae, but I'm going to get through that soon. Okay, so let's get your games which you do have imported into fs-uae. So if we just close fs-uae launcher down for now and close down Open Retro. Next up, we need to go into your documents. So open up Windows Explorer and under documents, you're going to find fs-uae. And here we go. So once we're inside fs-uae, what we're going to do is create a new folder inside here. So it's just right click, new and folder. And I'm going to call this one WHD load. So next up, I'm going to briefly talk to you about Amiga games themselves and file extensions. So Amiga games are very common on .adf. .adf is almost a complete rip of an Amiga disk, and you might have several of these just for one game, but there's an easier way around this where you can load a game without having to swap the disk images, and these are known as .lha, and .lha are essentially WHD loads games where all your disk images are pretty much compressed into one file, and we no longer need to mess around with swapping disk images halfway through a game or loading a game. So I've got two of these, and we've got Alien Breed 2, absolute classic, is where we're all. So I'm going to just copy these games. So right click, copy, and in my WHD load folder I've just created, I'm going to just paste these two games inside. Okay, so next thing we're going to do, we can easily access fs-uae now just by double left clicking on that shortcut we created earlier. And what we're going to do next is actually import our Kickstart ROMs. As we can see here, we got using Kickstart ROM replacement, and it does use a Kickstart ROM replacement, but it doesn't support much. So your best bet is to go to Amiga Forever and buy the proper ones. So what we're going to do is import Kickstart ROM. So to do this, we're going to go back up to that tick again and just scroll down until you see import Kickstarts. Now, if you've got an Amiga Forever CD or DVD, very easily, all you need to do is just go to Browse and you need to import your Kickstart ROMs from there. If you've got them on your computer, then just go to your Browse and then just locate where your Kickstart ROMs are located. And once you've located where your Kickstart ROMs are, just go to Import. And once that's imported, they are now inside of fs-uae launcher, and we can see that the Kickstart ROMs are no longer required. Okay, next up, I'm going to just connect my PlayStation 3 6-axis controller. And if you've got a different USB controller, just plug it in. Now, under Amiga joystick, as we can see, mine says default Xbox 360 controller. That's fine. That's going to read my PS3 controller just fine. And for a more nostalgic experience, under Amiga mouse, I've just put this to default mouse, Windows mouse. But if you don't fancy using a mouse, you can just click on here and just use the Xbox 360 controller, which will then substitute using a real mouse. But like I say, I'm going to just default this by using my Windows mouse. Okay, so getting back to the game side of things, as we can see, we got a load of games here which don't work, but we did create that WHD load folder with the .lha games inside. So what we're going to do is narrow this list down and actually let it display the games we've got. So we're going to go back up to this tick again, and from here, just drop down to settings, and just drop down to game database, and database games. Right here it says available in downloadable games. We don't want this, we want available games. So I've got two. So just close out of there once you put that to available games. And again, we're going to go back to the tick here, and we're going to go to update file database. And we can see under here that available Kickstart versions is everything from the Amiga 1000 up to the Commodore CD-TV. And that's through the Kickstart ROMs that I've imported. So we can see 3 folders under here, and all I'm going to do is just click on scan. And as we can see, this has now scanned my 2 games, which is Alien Breed 2 and Zool. So really, this is the first part of this setup guide done. So what I'm going to do is just double left click on one of my games just to test everything's set up okay. So let's try Alien Breed 2, double left click. And here we go. So if you're familiar with fs-uae or anything like that, you'll notice there's a similarity just here. And we also need to deal with opening this or launching it in a full screen. So once we import this through Playnite, you're obviously going to want to launch it in full screen modes. But let's just test this out a second. So also to make you aware that in order to exit these Amiga games using fs-uae, just a simple case of pressing F12 on your keyboard, and that's going to bring up this little menu just here. And what I'm going to do is just use my cursor keys on my keyboard and just go up to close, and that's that. Okay, so let's get this booting up in full screen mode. So to do this, very simple, we're just going to go back to that tick, and we're going to go to settings, and under video, start fs-uae in full screen mode, and we're going to put this one to on. And you've also got a range of different other settings here, scan line settings, for example, if you fancy that type of thing. But let's just do the basics for this. So let's close out of here. And again, let's just test this is now working in full screen mode. So I'm going to open up Zool this time. And there we go. We're now in full screen mode. So F12, and then obviously use your cursor keys just to close out of here. And just to make you aware that you can make this into a full screen mode before I close this down and get onto the Playnite part. To make this into a full screen mode or rather stretched, just go up to this little box just here, and as you can see, that one now brings it into full screen. Okay, so we're up and running now with fs-uae, and I appreciate this one's pretty long-winded, but as we know, Amiga isn't particularly the nicest thing to emulate. So finally, we've got to the part where we can now import this and get Playnite launching with fs-uae. So let's open up Playnite again. And what we're going to do is go over to the controller at the top left, which is orange and yellow in color. And the first thing we're going to do here is connect Playnite with fs-uae. So we're going to go to Library, Configure Emulators, and first of all, we're just going to go down to Add, and name is going to be fs-uae. And the installation folder for this, we're just going to go over to that folder and we're going to go and select fs-uae, which I put on my desktop. Select folder, emulator specification. If we just drop this down, you'll find fs-uae here. And what we're going to do next, this part is very important. If you don't do this, your games will not launch. If we go to Profile section and go to Add, Custom Profile, and once Custom Profile is open, we're going to name this again, so fs-uae, and supported platforms is going to be Commodore Amiga. So just scroll down and just check Commodore Amiga, and also check Commodore Amiga CD32, and just come out of there. Now, the executable for this one, we're going to have to find this, which is on your desktop. So just go to Select File for Executable, and what I'm going to do is link this up. And what I'm going to do is link this one up to where my fs-uae installation is. So that's on my desktop. And if I just highlight Launcher, or rather click into it, I'm then going to go into Windows, and just highlight times 8664 and open. And from here, we can then scroll over to fs-uae launcher and just select that one, rather just highlight it and then press open. And under arguments, we need to type in --, full screen, then quotation mark, image path. Now, I needs to be in a capital as well as path, quotation mark. And under working directory, we need to scroll over to select folder for this one again. And we're going to go back to desktop where that fs-uae installation is placed. fs-uae folder, back to launcher, Windows, times 8664, just select this folder. Tracking modes can be left to default. Now, supported file types. Now, if you're planning on using anything but LHA UHD loads games, just type these in. So for this, I'm using the LHA file extensions for my games. So I'm going to just type in LHA. And from here, I'm going to just press save. So that's your emulator, or rather fs-uae, now configured. So we're going to go and now add the game. So go back up to the controller, add game, emulated game, and add scanner. Scan with emulator fs-uae, profile fs-uae, and scan the folder. So we need to now point this to where our Amiga games are. So if you remember earlier in this video, I put my LHA or WHD loads games in a dedicated folder that I made, and we can find this under Documents, and I put them into my fs-uae folder when I created a WHD loads game there and here. So select folder and just press on Start Scan, and we now can see both of my games, Alien Breed 2 and Zol, and the platforms are for Commodore Amiga, and I'm going to import these. Okay, so we can now see Alien Breed 2, which has got a remastered cover art for this one. This isn't the original artwork. And we got Zool. So let's actually test if this is working. So if I just press play. And there we go. So we've got Amiga now launching through Playnite. And just remember, if we press F12 on the keyboard, this is going to bring us into this menu where we can exit games. And if F12 doesn't do it, you might have on your keyboard a FN button. If you press FN plus F12 together, that will then open up this menu. And just remember, we can also use this icon just here to stretch our games. So let's just go back into Zool. And I'm going to just back out of this one. And I'm also going to try my Alien Breed 2 game. So again, I'm just going to press on that. And just let me remind you, if we go onto the icon, the joypad or controller icon, switch to full screen mode, press this. And this will obviously bring you into a full screen mode for Playnite. And you've got some really fancy music in the background. So let's launch up the other game I've imported, which is Alien Breed 2, and play.
Player 1 requires first aid.
So if you're choosing to use .adf files for your games, should there be a point where you need to swap your disk over, all you need to do is just go down to remove media, so obviously using the cursor keys on your keyboard, and just selecting disk 2. And obviously to exit this full screen mode on Playnite, if you just press F11, that's going to take us back out into the Windows mode. And again, if F11 doesn't do it for you, then if you've got FN key on your keyboards, then press these simultaneously, and that's going to bring you back into this window mode. So that's it for today's Playnite setup guide with Commodore Amiga. So yes, a fairly complex system to set up, but I think that goes without saying. Amiga emulation isn't particularly the easiest, but fs-uae probably is one of the easiest ways to play those classics. And like I said at the start of the video, if you like what you've seen today, hit notifications, subscribe and like so it gets you up-to-date emulation video content that I upload daily. And also be sure to check out my membership option too here on my channel. If there's a specific setup guide that you want, anything technical, just select the next level tier, and that's going to get you a perk where I can customize a video and get you running with whatever the question is you might be. Technical is my thing, and I love being technical. And also be sure to check me out on social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And I'm going to be uploading more Playnite videos soon. If you've not checked out my initial Playnite setup guide from July this year, 2023, check that one out, and that will give you a bit more of a idea of what Playnite can do. And I also uploaded a PCSX2, PS2 emulator setup guide for Playnite yesterday too. So check that one out if you're into PlayStation 2 games. But until next time, stay retro.